she said. "It's just lunch. And if you've ever been in love, you'll understand why I wanted to believe her. Love does that to you. It makes you ignore the warning lights flashing in your gut. It makes you rationalize the kind of details that would be obvious to anyone on the outside looking in. Because the truth is, when you love someone, you don't want to catch them lying. You want to prove yourself wrong." So when she smiled at me, phone in her hand, and said she was going to meet a colleague for lunch, I nodded, kissed her cheek, and let her go. That's what a trusting husband does. Right? He trusts. But the universe has a cruel sense of timing. A few days later, the truth didn't come to me in some dramatic scene or confrontation. It came quietly, folded inside a receipt that slipped out of her purse. A pale slip of paper no longer than my hand, crumpled and smoothed out again, as if she had looked at it a few times before deciding to tuck it away. At first I thought nothing of it. Just a restaurant bill. But then my eyes landed on the details. Not 2 sandwiches or a salad. No, a bottle of champagne. A bouquet of roses. And the final line, bold and unmistakable, room 214. Upstairs. I swear my heart stopped. My eyes blurred, but I kept reading it over and over, like repetition might change the words. "Lunch?" she'd said. "Just lunch. But since when does lunch come with champagne, roses, and a rented room upstairs? Since when does a colleague bring you flowers and follow it with a hotel charge tacked onto the same bill?" I sat there in the kitchen, the sunlight streaming across the counter, and felt my chest cave it. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was silent, suffocating. I wanted to crumple that receipt into nothing, pretend I'd never seen it. But my hands wouldn't move. They just trembled, holding the flimsy slip of paper like it weighed 1,000 pounds. And here's the part I don't think people talk about enough. The betrayal wasn't just in the receipt itself. It was in the memory of her words when she left that day. The casual tone, the soft smile, the way she leaned over and kissed me like I was the only one in her world. That's what cut deepest. How natural the lie had become for her, how easily she said it. That night, when she came home, she was glowing. Not tired from meetings, not stressed from work. Glowing. She floated through the door, humming under her breath, the kind of tune people hum when life feels good. She kissed me hello, dropped her bag on the counter, and started talking about how busy her day had been. I listened, nodding, my eyes drifting toward her purse, where the receipt had fallen earlier. She had no idea. Do you know what I did? I folded the receipt carefully and slid it into my wallet. Not because I was ready to confront her, but because I knew if I stormed in with accusations, she'd deny, twist, spin it back on me. I could already hear her voice. "You're over-effing, you're paranoid. It was just lunch." But I had proof now. Cold, hard proof. And I wasn't going to waste it. So I played the part. I smiled at her. I cooked dinner. I even poured her a glass of wine. And all the while, the receipt burned in my pocket, like a secret flame, reminding me that the life I thought I had wasn't real anymore. The days after were the hardest. Because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Every detail takes on new meaning. The way she lingered in the shower, the sudden bursts of laughter at her phone, the perfume she wore on casual days out, all of it pointed to something I'd been too blind or too trusting to admit before. I started watching. Not obviously, not obsessively, but carefully. I noted when she left, how long she was gone, the excuses she gave. I checked our bank statements, our credit card bills, and sure enough, the patterns emerged. Little charges at places I'd never been with her, a boutique florist, a wine bar across town, and every so often, a hotel name tucked between groceries and gas, like she thought it would blend in if she buried it deep enough. But here's the thing. I didn't stop loving her. That's the cruelest part of betrayal. You can know the truth, you can see the proof, and still your heart aches for them. Still you want them to look you in the eye and tell you you're wrong. That it was a mistake, that they'll never do it again. Because the alternative, accepting that the person you built your life around has already left you in every way that matters, is too unbearable to face head-on. So I stayed quiet. I laughed at her jokes. I held her hand when we went out with friends. I let her curl against me at night, and in the silence I gathered proof, patterns, strength. Because when the time came, I wasn't going to confront her with suspicion. I was going to confront her with certainty. The breaking point came a week later. She told me she was meeting the same colleague again, the one she swore was just a friend. I kissed her goodbye, told her to enjoy her lunch, and the second she left, I followed. Not too close, not obvious, but close enough to see her car pull into the parking lot of a restaurant I knew well. She walked in, and 15 minutes later, so did he. Tall, confident, carrying himself like he belonged to her. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. I waited, heart pounding, until I saw them leave together laughing, his hand grazing her back as they walked toward the hotel next door. And when they disappeared through those glass doors, everything inside me broke and hardened at the same time. I drove home in silence, gripping the wheel so tight it hurt, the receipt still tucked in my wallet. And as I pulled into the driveway, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be the fool at the table smiling while my wife toasted another man. I wasn't going to let her gaslight me with just lunch. I was going to end this. But I was going to end it on my terms. That night, when she came home flushed and happy, smelling faintly of champagne, I kissed her, smiled, and asked her how lunch had been. She said the same thing she always did. Good, just lunch. And I smiled again, because now I knew exactly how I was going to destroy the lie she'd built. That's where part 2 begins. Not with rage, not with screaming, but with silence sharpened into strategy. Because sometimes the best way to expose a lie isn't by shouting it, it's by letting the liar choke on their own words in front of everyone they thought they'd fool. I remember sitting there in the living room that night, her curled up against me, the television flickering quietly in the background, while she pretended nothing was wrong. She smelled faintly of roses and champagne. Funny how the human brain can match sense to words on a receipt, even when the liar sitting beside you swears it was just lunch. I held her hand, thumb brushing across her skin, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt like I was touching a stranger. But I didn't pull away. I held tighter, because she thought she was safe, thought her secret was untouchable, and that made her sloppiness is where liars hang themselves. I told myself, wait, watch, gather, don't blow up now, don't waste the proof, make it undeniable. So I waited. Days turned into weeks, and in those weeks, I became something I never thought I'd be, the detective of my own life. Every move she made, every excuse, every charge on the bank account, I noted it all, not in a bitter rush, but calmly, methodically. She'd tell me she had another lunch, and I'd nod, kiss her cheek, and later check the card statement. And there it was again. Champagne, flowers, a room for two, over and over, the same pattern, like a sick ritual. One evening while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The screen lit up with a message preview. His name, a single line. Next time, no room, just you. I stared at it until it dimmed, my jaw tight, my chest heavy, and I whispered to myself, that's all I needed. But still, I stayed silent. You have to understand something. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence gives you time to build a plan so complete, so devastating, that when you finally speak, the liar has no escape. And that's what I wanted. No escape. The opportunity came with her suggestion. Let's do a dinner with friends before the holidays get too busy. Perfect. Another table, another audience. Another stage where she'd try to play the role of perfect wife. I agreed instantly. That sounds great, I told her, and my voice didn't even crack. The night of the dinner, everything looked normal. The house was warm, the table set, laughter filling the air, as our closest friends gathered. She floated through the room, radiant, glass of wine in hand, her eyes darting to me now and then, with that practiced smile she'd mastered over the years. And me, I smiled back, calm, steady, the receipt burning like a brand in my wallet. We ate, we drank, and halfway through dessert, she stood, glass raised. I just want to say how grateful I am, she began, her voice soft, her eyes shimmering. For friends, for love, for all of you. She glanced at me, placing her hand lightly on my shoulder, her picture-perfect act in full bloom. And that was my cue. I stood too, lifting my glass. I'd like to add something, I said, my voice steady, even warm. The table quieted. All eyes turned to me. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the folded receipt. I laid it gently on the table in front of her, smoothing it flat with my hand. "This," I said, "is what just lunch looks like." She froze. Her glass wavered. The room leaned forward, curiosity buzzing. Someone at the table glanced down at the slip of paper, eyes widening as they read the words champagne, roses, room upstairs. I continued, calm, deliberate. "She told me it was lunch. Just lunch. But lunch doesn't usually come with champagne, does it? Lunch doesn't usually include roses, and lunch doesn't usually end with a room for two." Her face drained of color. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Just a stammer, a half-formed denial, dissolving into silence, as the table around us watched in shock. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply looked at her and said, "You thought I was overthinking, but the truth doesn't hide forever. It shows up in receipts, in roses, in rooms, and now it's here, in front of everyone. You thought you fooled." The silence was heavy. Someone coughed awkwardly. Another shifted in their seat. Her hands trembled as she reached for the receipt, as if hiding it could erase what it said, but it was too late. The words were already burned into the minds of everyone sitting there. I set my glass down, straightened my jacket, and said, "Enjoy the rest of your evening. And I walked out, calm, controlled. The fallout was chaos. She called me that night, over and over, texts, voicemails, begging me to talk, to come home, to work through it. But you can't work through champagne and roses and rooms upstairs. You can't patch over betrayal with apologies. Once trust is gone, it's gone." The next morning I went to a lawyer. I handed over the receipt, the bank statements, the patterns I'd documented. He nodded, professional, already building the case, and for the first time in months, I felt something like peace, not joy. Not yet, but peace, because I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I had been right all along. When she came home that evening, her eyes red from crying, she begged again. She swore it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything, that love poems don't mean nothing, roses don't mean nothing, champagne and hotel rooms don't mean nothing, choices mean something, and she had made hers. So I handed her the envelope with the legal documents inside. "You told me it was just lunch," I said, "but it was the end." She collapsed into tears, but I didn't flinch. I had already cried all my tears in silence, holding that receipt in my kitchen weeks earlier. Now, there was nothing left but clarity. In the weeks that followed, people took sides. Some friends called me brave. Others whispered about her behind her back. He vanished, of course. That's what they always do. The man who made promises in hotel rooms disappears when reality knocks. But me, I stood taller, stronger, because I had faced the truth, and I had walked away. And here's the part I need you to hear. Betrayal doesn't define you, it reveals them. You are not crazy for noticing the signs. You are not paranoid for trusting your gut. And when the truth finally shows itself, whether in a text, a photo, or a crumpled receipt, you have a choice. You can let it break you, or you can let it free you. Me, I chose freedom. So when I look back at that receipt now, tucked in a drawer, I don't feel pain anymore. I feel gratitude. Gratitude that I saw. Gratitude that I didn't explode too soon. Gratitude that I gave her enough rope to hang her lies in front of everyone. She said, "It's just lunch," but the receipt told me the truth. And the truth, in the end, was the one thing that saved me.